Welcome back to Channel C1. I'm Michael Jamal.
And this is Cam King.
Today we're reviewing the Oppenheimer movie by Christopher Nolan, starring Cillian Murphy and a lot of other people, actually. A lot of other people. We actually saw both Oppenheimer and Barbie today. We did the double feature.
Barbenheimer.
Stay tuned to the end. We'll let you know which one we thought was the best. They're clearly two different styles of movies, two different premises, but we'll let you know which one we thought executed better on that premise. Yeah. But Oppenheimer, it was intense. That's like the first word that comes. Like from literally the start of the movie to the end, it was constant intensity, but it didn't wear thin.
It was methodical.
It
was you could definitely see the design behind the movie, as you kind of do with Christopher Nolan movies. It was very well thought out. Every shot mattered. It was a 3-hour movie, and I didn't feel that a scene was wasted.
It was beautiful, but it wasn't surface level. It wasn't just beautiful cinematography for the sake of beautiful cinematography. The story warranted it. Each beautiful shot was there to help the story, not just to look beautiful. The sound design and how
phenomenal.
They made you feel what the characters were feeling, especially Oppenheimer, and the chaos that's going on in his brain at almost all times, and everything he's trying to balance between whether or not he should do it, how to do it, and his love life as well.
They did an excellent job of both showing it visually and auditory. Like both the sound design and the visuals worked very well in tandem with each other.
Oppenheimer is a dog, by the way. Cheating ass motherfucker.
You thought them dirty little physicists didn't get the hose, but he got that. Physics, is that what you said?
Physics, yeah, the physics, quantum physics. Florence Pugh was amazing in her role. However, her role wasn't like as large as I was maybe expecting it to be. And I would say about 60 to 70% of her scenes, she was naked. Maybe not 70, but it didn't feel like gratuitous nudity.
It felt like it added to her character. And also just helped show the relationship that they had and how casual it was. It was serious and casual.
And the toxicity of it, and how she said, why do you keep coming over here? Why do you keep coming over here? Or something like that. Why do you keep dealing with me? And he was like, you called me. And she was like, well, don't pick up. And he's like, all right. Okay.
Don't call me then.
Don't call me. You called me. I'm here. What?
To keep pivoting off the cinematography and the sound design and the visuals, of course, the actual explosion of the atomic bomb of the Trinity test was awe. It was in awe. It was very grandiose and scary.
Yeah, it was.
And then disturbing, because I understand that they're excited that they reached their milestone, but they're celebrating over this bomb that's about to kill hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah. And I'm just watching it. I'm like, man, this is.
And after the bomb killed hundreds of thousands of people, they had like a bit of a celebration, if you will. And you could see the look on his face as he's saying things that he knows is going to hype them up about them, defeating Japan and, it being a deterrent for Germany, et cetera, et cetera. And him looking at these people's smiling faces that they had just basically killed all these people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And then Truman, I'm not a history buff, so I'm finding a hard time keeping track of who's the president at certain times. But I think in this particular scene, it was Truman. But then it was Eisenhower.
To put it in perspective,
later on,
it's Roosevelt first, the majority of World War II. He served about 12 years or whatever.
Okay.
He dies from polio, I believe, but he dies at some point during World War II. Truman assumes his office and gets reelected, I believe, for a few years. And then after Truman, you have Eisenhower. People can correct me if I'm wrong, but my memory serves me right. It's Roosevelt during World War II, Truman, Eisenhower.
And I will say, do you need to brush up on some of the World War II history to watch this movie to enjoy it? I would say no, but it would help with some of the references or callbacks or names that are introduced, like the people who show up. You're like, wait, isn't that like, you would know? Like, for instance, they had like a John F. Kennedy quote unquote Easter egg. They had Albert Einstein is interested in the movie. He has a scene that was kind of funny when he popped up. It was very spy Nick Fury-esque. He just popped up. It's like, what are you doing?
Came out of the shadows.
He literally came out, and he was like the Yoda, if you will, a little bit of Oppenheimer's life in terms of like, he would go to him for like wisdom if he had questions about even the moral quandaries of creating this bomb and whatnot. Iron Man, Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. was seemingly, he had a much bigger role in the movie than we expected.
Because we don't really know too much about Oppenheimer and Strauss.
Right.
However, it came to realize very quickly he was the villain essentially of the movie, or portrayed him as the villain. Though you can argue Oppenheimer also is, but
right, exactly.
He definitely was portrayed as a shitty person. Strauss was, and Robert Downey Jr. did a fantastic job of portraying him. I didn't notice any Iron Man performance in him. I did not want to recognize him as Robert Downey Jr. Right. I recognized him as the character he was playing.
Yeah, Emily Blunt did a great job as the wife, the bride wife. That's a reference from Barbie one. We watched our Barbie review. How she had basically had to deal with the fact that she knows he's cheating on her, and the fact that she's also a biologist, but is kind of just treated like his, just the wife of Oppenheimer. It was pretty interesting to see the dynamic of their relationship, especially after Florence Pugh's character Jean, I believe, died. I believe from suicide. Looks like because I thought I saw a hand pushing her head down into the water. Either way, she dies, and he's mourning the death, but she finds out that he's cheated. Emily Blunt's character finds out that he's cheating on her, and the person she's cheating on her with has just died, all in almost like one swoop. Like, it was just, she was like, you don't get to do the sin and then have people feel sorry for you, as he's like crying, and it's like, wow. It was, you could see the internal conflict in her face when she's like, I'm not supposed to be consoling you right now, because you shouldn't. Yeah, it was very interesting to see how she dealt with that, how they dealt with raising children, how the children were basically, you wouldn't even know Oppenheimer had kids. Based on this movie. Joshua Peck is in there. Interesting cameo to see. I don't remember the name of his character, but that was pretty cool. It put into perspective how many minds go into something like this. How many ideas, how many people are working on this. Even though Oppenheimer was the head, there's so many things that he didn't necessarily think of, like other people thought of, and then he probably, put it into action. But it was interesting to see the vastness of the team that was assembled when they were going to get all of them, and they had to build that whole camp. Matt Damon's character was pretty interesting. Jason Bourne himself. I like their dynamic, their arguments, their banter back and forth. Him and Oppenheimer is pretty interesting. And they did a good job of calling back to all the little moments that seem little at first, or seem just like character moments, but actually play a lot into the story that I appreciated.
All the threads connected very well.
Yeah. And it ended up tying up in like little things as far as the twist, I guess you could say. Robert Downey Jr.'s character doesn't seem like the quote unquote villain or antagonist in the beginning of the movie.
Unless you already know about the whole situation.
Right, unless you are, already know what happened in the real life story. Let's see, cinematography, sound, dialogue, no wasted dialogue, all felt natural. And there were some things that we couldn't necessarily hear. We like watching stuff with subtitles. I know some people don't, but we normally use subtitles when we're here at home. But
German and like Polish and there were other accents were a little bit difficult at first.
Albert Einstein had a few lines that I was like, what did he say?
And also they use a lot of big language that you may not hear on the regular, so that kind of vernacular you also have to like process too.
Right, and the way that they're using it. Also, there's a lot of names that you have to remember. I mean, you don't necessarily, they kind of remind you, they do a good job of reminding you who each person is towards the end, but you got to remember their name and whose side they're on and how it plays into the case that they're making against Oppenheimer.
Clearly, for those that have the history and more of a science knowledge, it's going to be easy to remember those names because they're the true names, right?
Right, so you know them kind of already. Yeah, it was, from start to finish, it was captivating. We saw it at 8 o'clock. It's a 3-hour movie, which means we crowd out around, 11-ish, and we had already seen a different movie, Barbie, earlier in the day, and we still both stayed awake. And I am notorious for falling asleep during movies. So
yeah, you won't catch us reacting to Lord of the Rings because he fell asleep in it. I'll probably have his head for that.
Yeah, well, I didn't expect it to be. I don't know. I wasn't prepared for the Lord of the Rings style of storytelling in the length of the movie. So, but I was prepared for Oppenheimer to be. But Oppenheimer was so intense and fast moving that it was just. You couldn't take your eyes off it. It was really beautiful. The way they painted the picture of the inside of his brain, like his imagination, the way they depicted that on screen, and the imagination that you could like start to assume a lot of scientists have, and what the possibilities are, what the tragedy could come of their invention, of their discovery. It was very, very beautiful to watch.
Overall, I honestly give this movie like 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
Experience was just so enjoyable. The only things that, it's not necessarily that I didn't like things about the movie, but it was hard to follow at first. The pacing was very quick right off the bat. However, it worked in its favor later on, and you were able to finally grasp
you grasped it.
The timeline jumps that they were doing.
Yes, yeah, because they jumped a lot in the timeline, and at first you're trying to figure out when is this. You can kind of tell by looking at the length and color of Oppenheimer's hair, and of course there are some sequences that are entirely in black and white, which represent basically the present.
Or the most current.
The most current. But yeah, all the actors did a great job. Emily Blunt, Robert Downey Jr.,
what do you
Matt
think
Damon.
the black and white actually meant, though?
I thought it had something to do with how people look at things as black and white, but there's really a gray area. In many cases, the moral quandary of it all. And I thought it was just trying to show how they're trying to paint it as you're wrong, I'm right, when in reality, there's no true right answer to come to.
That's an interesting perspective. I knew it had to do something with the perspective, how you're supposed to kind of view it. I did just look it up, and Christopher Nolan explained that the color is from the perspective of Oppenheimer and his subjective experience. That's why when we're in color, we got the more intense shots. We have the way they made him feel claustrophobic and his anxieties and his fears and all that. We got to visualize all those things. The black and white was supposed to be the more objective view of Oppenheimer. And that's why you had the Senate hearing, and you had everyone, going back and forth, and it was there was no Oppenheimer in that.
He wasn't in any of the black and white scenes
for the most part. Yeah, he was in a couple when he was in the beginning. I thought showing off The Office or whatever.
When he was in the scenes with Strauss
and that first Albert Einstein scene or whatever.
Yeah, when he was in the scene. I did not know.
And I see now when they show the Albert Einstein scene again later in color.
It's in color.
It's in his perspective.
It's from his perspective.
Whereas in the black and white, you just saw
Strauss,
more objective.
Okay. That's pretty interesting. I knew
so
of course cool. It would have some.
It definitely worked. I feel like it was also helped just identify. It helped separate the scenes a bit and the timeline of that. So.
Mm-hmm. It definitely inspires me to want to go look up all this stuff to see like how faithful it was to what actually happened. It makes me
I have confidence
very much interested. No, but it's just, I'm just curious to see I had seen the pictures of the actors side by side with the character. I mean, the real life people they played, and like compare, like how they look, and then versus how I guess those people may have acted in real life. I always wonder that about like the minutia of their personalities and how like they talk or whatever.
That was probably the hardest thing to get accurate, because I don't know how many interviews and things you have. I'm sure Oppenheimer has plenty of interviews because he was a very public figure. He was the father of the atomic bomb. Yeah. And Einstein was somewhat. Yeah. But television didn't exist too much in the 20s. It was a new thing. So you don't have a overall excellent movie. And so
as far as how it compares to Barbie,
did you like better?
I would say at this point, Nolan, in comparison, I was looking up some of the other movies that Greta Gerwig has directed. And this is, I would say, a little bit of a departure from her norm in terms, I haven't seen those other movies, but in terms of their style, I know kind of the gist of what they're about in Little Women and like Lady Bird. And they're more of period pieces, not the blockbuster party type movie that Barbie is. So it's interesting to see her seemingly, from my perspective, take on a new challenge. And I think it's very clear in her directing that she has some natural talent for comedy, storytelling, message,
execution of style. She stayed very stylistic in that movie.
Stylistic and intertwining the message with the story. But as of now, I feel like Nolan clearly has already refined his style, and I think he executed as a whole better than she did in Barbie. However, I thought Barbie was pretty good.
Well, yeah, you have to look at our review for that one and check it out. But I would agree for the most part. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Christopher Nolan. I mean, you can see from the acting community. Matt Damon posted an interview, or there was an interview posted about him, and he and his wife are in like a couples therapy. And his wife is kind of wants him to take a break from acting because he's been doing a lot of acting. He's been, taking it very seriously and spend time with the family. And he said, yeah, I'll do that. I can compromise with that. However, if Nolan calls, I have to go.
Yeah.
And Nolan called. So it's just very interesting to see that like these actors that work with him, they want to come back and work with that director.
I think it was Florence Pugh mentioned how all that when you're on a set with Nolan, everybody is at their A game. They want to do well for Nolan because also they know that their effort is probably going to be rewarded with a quality story and movie.
They have a trust. They can reward his trust with their performances and their great effort.
They know they're not just there for a paycheck.
They know that even if they put a best performance in, like the editor and director and the producers aren't going to screw it up. Like they can trust that it's going to be handled well because there's plenty of times I'm sure
they put in a great performance,
but it gets on the chopper room floor and it just gets
just the story around their performance is just weak. So
to be fair, Nolan doesn't all have not every single one of his movies is absolutely amazing. We haven't seen Tenet, but I do know that I believe it's Tenet's the one that's got some like
multiverse time
shenanigans kind of going on, and some of people weren't crazy about that movie as much, but we've all seen the Dark Knight trilogy, arguably one of the best superhero trilogies, arguably one of the best trilogies of any kind of series. We've all seen, we haven't actually seen Inception, but we do know the impact it had when it came out, and that's always been highly regarded. He hasn't seen Interstellar. Interstellar is my personal favorite Nolan movie because of its personal connections and the father-daughter storyline, but that's another intense, absolutely amazing science fiction-y movie that he does a beautiful thing of weaving in a theme with great characters, with some good plot and storytelling, while at the same time, the medium at which he does it, whether it's Batman, superhero, comics, or, interstellar, space, sci-fi, or a history piece, he does a great way of executing that and bringing those themes out.
Just good storytelling sensibilities to where he just it's one thing to know the rules of storytelling, and it's other thing to just know in your own, like, trusting your creative instinct. He has a great creative instinct in terms of his directing style and storytelling
and his attention to detail.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Check out everything else on the channel. Like, comment, subscribe. Boop.
Bye.